Hello, everyone. Welcome to Total Football Talk. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Eric.
And Super Bowl edition wrap up is here and ready. So, without further ado, I guess, let's go ahead and get this party started. Trying to figure out the lighting. Sorry, guys, this is going to be poor quality lighting. Anyway, 49ers lose their second straight Super Bowl, this time to the Kansas City Chiefs, 31-20. Blew a 10-point lead, gave up 21 points in the fourth quarter. Not really sure how I feel about this game. I'll tell you what I do know. A lot of people are saying that this is a great Super Bowl. I don't think it was a great Super Bowl. I don't think it was an unenjoyable Super Bowl. Do I think it was better than last year's Super Bowl? No, the Rams were in it. But do I think from an entertainment standpoint it was better than last year's Super Bowl? Yes. If you were an offensive person. If you were a defensive-minded person, I think this game was still better than last year's Super Bowl. So, but I'm not going to sit here and put this anywhere in the top 50 Super Bowls of all time. Great comeback, 10 points in the fourth quarter. I believe that ties the second largest comeback in Super Bowl history. And probably the second largest from a deficit that big. Or that late. Obviously, the 28-3 game is bigger and a bigger margin of comeback. Kyle Shanahan has something in common, though. I heard a statistic, something like he's been outscored 84-0 in the fourth quarter of Super Bowls. I've heard a lot of talks about Shanahan and, is he choking in the big game? Is he just not able to make those play calls? I've heard a lot of criticism about their quarterback. A lot of the same stuff we heard about the Rams last year. Although I will say I don't think the criticism has been nearly as strong towards Garoppolo as it was towards Goff last year. By and large, it was entertaining, but I guess the way I look at it is I'm happy the Super Bowl was San Francisco and Kansas City and not New England and, say, Green Bay or Seattle and somebody else. But at the same time, it's like you knew what you were getting when you got it. The 49ers abandoned the running game. I said you'd know who'd win this game in the first quarter. And in the first quarter, San Francisco was throwing the ball. They weren't running the ball well. They couldn't stop Mahomes. And I believe it was 7-3 at the end of the first quarter. So I know the final score, the Niners had a 10-point lead going in the fourth quarter, but I told you, watch the first quarter, and that was going to tell you everything you needed to know about this game. One thing that I do want to say that was really funny is I'm at the Super Bowl party with a bunch of people, right? We're watching the Super Bowl, and the Niners are driving down 10-3 or whatever the score was. And I remember saying, just throw a use check on a wheel route right now and you'll score a touchdown. And instead, they threw him on a mini wheel route in the middle of the field where he kind of looped around the tight end and came back to the middle of the field and caught the ball for a touchdown. And like 7 people at the Super Bowl party right after they scored just kind of stopped, looked at me and went, "Really?" I'm like, "What? I told you that was the right call." Pretty cool moment. But I knew when it was 7-3 Kansas City at the end of one that the Chiefs are going to win that Super Bowl, Eric.
Yeah, talk about a tale of three quarters to one quarter. Kansas City didn't look that great in the first 3 quarters. When they went down and scored to take the 7-3 lead, and then San Francisco basically scored 17 unanswered points, and it looked like, hey, you know what? This might be San Francisco's game to lose. Well, it was. I don't buy the notion that Shanahan didn't trust Garoppolo. I've heard so much talk about that I don't buy it. I just think that, hey, let's get a couple of runs because they're doing a good job in covering kill. And the most successful plays we've had with Deebo Samuel are reverses and jet sweeps. So, when you don't have the type of passing plays in your offense that a Kansas City does, your offense is kind of limited. That's not Garoppolo's fault. That's the person who installs the offense. But although then you look at the pass plays to run plays, and it was like 37 to 22 passes to runs. And you're like, okay, well, there was a lot of empty passes because it just seemed like Garoppolo misfired on a few of those passes. And they both threw 2 interceptions, and I knew the pressure of the game was going to get a little bit to Mahomes, and he threw 2 bad picks. Not as bad as what I think Garoppolo threw at the times, especially at the times that he threw them. But Kansas City was able to overcome adversity, and they're like, oh, hey, 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Hey, we're going to score 21 points, guys. And they just put the game away when they scored to make it 20-17, and then forced a 3 and out. It was like, okay, here it comes. Like here we know what's going to happen. And you know what? They kept the foot on the pedal. You got to give credit where credit's due. Happy for Andy Reid. A lot of wins in his career now. 222 for his career now with a Super Bowl win. And I mean, guys, I'm telling you, Kansas City may be a big force for the next 10 years. But I'll tell you this much: if Patrick Mahomes is about himself and gets one of the largest contracts in football history, because it's coming. I know on their offense, 10 out of the 11 are signed through next year. There's going to be a lot of guys, a lot of good players who are going to be hitting the open market because of Mahomes' deal that he's going to probably sign this offseason. So it may not always smell like roses in Kansas City, and Mahomes is going to have to do his best and do even more than he did in his first full season to keep Kansas City afloat, especially with the Broncos starting to come back up, and who knows what the other 2 teams are going to do. But
the Broncos? You're going with the Broncos as a team that's coming back up?
You know what? Who else?
I mean,
The Broncos played really good football at the end of the year, and they have a chance to, if they keep working toward what they were doing at the end of the year and keep moving forward and get a couple of playmakers they need to replace in Emmanuel Sanders. I don't think Deshaun Hamilton is the guy that's going to be there to replace him. The Broncos are a scary team. They still have a really good defense. I don't see it from the Chargers, and I think the Raiders are hit and miss. So I think if there's only one team to challenge the Chiefs, it's going to be the Broncos in the next couple of years. Now, we might be seeing one of these 10 to 15 year runs by the Chiefs. We don't know.
Stop. I am so tired of this. I've heard this all week long. I hear this every time somebody wins a Super Bowl, that for the next 20 years, this is the team. What New England did to beat...
Different.
No, I'll straight up. I'm going to say it. To have a 20-year run, you're going to have to cheat like the New England Patriots did. New England didn't have a 20-year run. They had a 5-year run, and who knows how much cheating was in that 5-year run. I don't know of any of New England's championships which ones I'd consider legitimate. Okay? Now, do I think they could go, this? Do you know how many teams have won a Super Bowl in the opening year of the decade and didn't win another Super Bowl the rest of the decade?
Yeah, quite a few of them.
Yeah, exactly. The Giants, the Ravens, to mention a few, okay? The only one to win, the Colts in 70. The 49ers, or the Raiders in 80, were the only team to win 2 Super Bowls in that decade. They won in 80 and 83, and that's it. I don't know about 2010. Who won in 2010, Eric? Was that Pittsburgh? Green Bay. There's another one, right? So you win the Super Bowl to start the decade, you don't get back to very many. It is more likely that Kansas City won't return again this decade than it is that they're going to be the team of the decade. Do I think Kansas City has the potential to be the team of the decade? I don't know. Do I think they could get back and win it next year? I don't know. Complacency sets in. We know what Andy Reid does in the playoffs every year, this year being the exception. And if you think they're going to be able to fall down 24 and 31 or 24 and 10 and 10 in 3 straight playoff games next year and have the same result, I think you're kidding yourself, because they're going to have a different slate of opponents, right? So they're going to have to fine-tune that. I don't think their defense is particularly impressive. And
I'm not saying it's definite. I'm saying it could happen.
It could happen. And Mahomes is a great quarterback, and the Kansas City Chiefs fan base deserves this win. Andy Reid deserves this win. I'm going to touch on that in a minute. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Kansas City, but it's like when the Rams went to the Super Bowl last year and the Rams won. I wasn't going to sit here and put up with people going, oh, the Rams are the next team of the decade. They're going to win 3 or 5 or 6 Super Bowls. You just don't know that.
And nobody said that.
Well, the Rams didn't win the Super Bowl, Eric, so of course we don't know that. But I promise you, if the Rams won, people would have been saying it. You know it as well as I do. So it comes with the territory when you win a Super Bowl. New England won, and they were supposed to be back this year, remember? They were going to be back in the Super Bowl again this year. I think Kansas City has a good nucleus, and I think they have a really good chance of getting back. But I don't know that they're going to be the next best team over the next 10, 15, 20 years. I've heard that a lot this week, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but it irritates me because I'm hearing this left and right, and it's like, guys, really? Where's your evidence?
No, it's funny because I haven't actually heard it. The only thing that I read one article that the early odds to win the Super Bowl were 6-1 for favoring the Chiefs.
Yeah, well, it was 3-1 last year for New England, so whatever.
So put your money down, 6-1 odds on the Chiefs.
There you go, $60, you got this. A couple things that I want to say about the Super Bowl. There were a couple moments in the Super Bowl that I want to point out. I thought the pass interference on Kittle at the end of the first half, when they put him in field goal range and they were ready to go up another field goal, I thought that was a ticky-tack penalty, and I didn't think it was a legitimate flag. It really was. It really was. But for me, there are 3 moments in this game, and I blame coaching. And this is why I'll take McVay over Shanahan every day, all day. Okay? Number 1, 3rd and 10, he throws the ball deep downfield on a vertical route. One opportunity to hit it, with a quarterback that hasn't been that accurate on the deep ball all day long. You stop the clock, you put yourself in 4th and long, and now you got to go for it. Right?
That was when they were down 24-20 in the 4th quarter, and they were going to go for it on 4th and 10. Yes, because we talked back and forth on this. Like, what the heck are you doing? Yeah.
So that was actually the second bad call. The first bad call was the series before when they were up 20-17 and they got the ball back with 6:03 to go. I'm like, cool. Niners are going to do what the Niners do. They're going to run out the clock and they're going to win this thing by 3. What do? They get 7 yards on first down or 6 yards on first down. Pass, punt. Run the damn ball, Shanahan. Did you learn nothing from the Super Bowl the year before? The last time you were in it. Okay, so now they're down 24-20. What do? First down, 5-yard gain. Pass, downfield pass, or pass, downfield pass, and they end up losing. I'm just shaking my head going, wow, dude, back-to-back series, you open with a plus 5-yard gain, and you end up not running the ball again the rest of the series. He is who I thought he was, to quote somebody once here in Arizona.
Yeah, that's still a great line.
Yeah, it is. To me, those 3 moments, the not running the ball when they were up 20-17, the not running the ball when they were down 24-20, and then on that same drive, throwing the deep ball on 3rd and 10 was just mind-boggling. I was just like, wow, dude, you don't know how to coach football. I don't care that you're in the Super Bowl. You suck horribly. It's like, why would you do all of that work to get to the Super Bowl with that formula and then not use that formula in crunch time? Can you explain that to me, Eric?
I'm going to try. And here's what I saw. The Niners were 50-50 hitting the holes when they were running the ball. Spagnuolo did one heck of a job to limit their run game. And yes, while they still hit their holes and they still got some yards, he was able to hit them within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage. It's what happens when you have Terrell Suggs on one side, you have Frank Clark on another, and then you have your big D tackle who made a big impact. Chris Jones, I think it was, who was making a big impact. And getting him back is what helped solidify the defensive line. And they were like, okay, you're not going to run all day on us like you did against Green Bay, like you did against Minnesota. Okay? Mm-hmm. We're going to gear you to run, but you're going to beat us through the air. And they weren't able to do that.
So now a couple things that I want to comment here, and then I'll let you kind of take it away. Jimmy Garoppolo, everyone's like, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo's a bust. He sucks. Really? Because he lost the Super Bowl? Because no great quarterbacks ever lost a Super Bowl. So Johnny Unitas was garbage because he lost Super Bowl III, right? I guess Darryl LaMonica should be taken out of the Hall of Fame and put into the Hall of Shame because he lost the Super Bowl, right? I guess Roger Staubach was absolute trash because he lost the Super Bowl, right? That's what we're going to go with. Joe Theismann should be taken down from the Redskin Ring of Honor because he lost the Super Bowl, right? Jim Kelly, he garbage? Because he never won one. He went to 4. Marino. There's another one. Take him out of the Hall. Throw out all his passing records. He's trash. He lost the Super Bowl. And I guess...
Favre lost the Super Bowl.
Right, Brett Favre, there's another one. But I guess guys like Trent Dilfer, right? We got to put them in the Hall of Fame, man. Trent Dilfer, that guy could win. He was a winner, right? We're going to go with Trent Dilfer. Jim Plunkett, outstanding. Hall of Fame quarterback. Better than Dan Marino, right? We're going to go with that. It's another one. Let me think of another one. Just off the top of my head. Joe Flacco, better than Dan Marino and all those guys I mentioned. Roger Staubach, Jim Kelly. I'm going to put Joe Flacco in the Hall of Fame, right? What are we talking about? You lose the Super Bowl, and Goff and Garoppolo suddenly are the worst quarterbacks that ever lived. There are so many worse quarterbacks that have had better teams that won. And one, Brad Johnson, there's another one for the Buccaneers. You going to put him in the Hall of Fame? Yeah, friggin' break. And then Andy Reid. Oh, now he's a good coach. Really? John Robinson never went to a Super Bowl. He is the best coach in Ram history to this point. Number 1 in wins and number 1 in every Ram fan's hearts. We know how good of a coach he was. Right? Trying to think of another one that never went to a Super Bowl. Just off the top, Raymond Berry never won one, but he went to one. So there's one. Raymond Berry never won one. He was a damn good coach. Golly manure. Trying to think of all the teams that have lost with only one coach, only one time going. Mike Martz, he only went once, and he was considered an offensive genius, right? You don't need to get to the Super Bowl to be a great coach. You don't. There's a lot of coaches out there in the 80s and the 90s that were pretty damn good and effective that never went to the show. So I'm happy for Andy Reid because he finally gets that bugaboo off his back, and with these millennial douchebags on ESPN and NFL Network, he could finally get some credit that he should have been getting for decades. Certainly the douche canoes on ESPN radio. So that's my take. Go E.
I mean, I don't know what else really there is much to add, but it's not really just about winning a Super Bowl as far as legacy is concerned, because if that were the case, Jim Kelly's legacy would be completely tarnished.
Right.
But no, that for Garoppolo, it's a learning experience. Yeah, he already has 2 rings with the Patriots, but he has played. This is a good experience experience for him if they can not break the bank for Kittle and still be able to put guys around him. San Francisco's still going to be tough next year. Yeah, they benefited from a third-place schedule. A lot of times when you get better and you have that third, fourth-place schedule, and you go from third, fourth place to first place, yeah, it's tougher next year. I know firsthand.
Yeah.
But
you can do it. I know firsthand, too. You look at the Rams.
You can sustain it, yes.
The Rams had a first-place schedule the year they went to the Super Bowl. I mean, you can do it after having a pretty phenomenal year. I agree.
So I'm not gonna take too much off of Garoppolo and put this loss on him. No, I mean, you got to look at the play calling, and then you got to look at their defense, like what they were doing the last 7.5 minutes, because I mean, it's like they were already ready to celebrate, and San Francisco just laid down, and 21 points came across the board for the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm. Want to talk Todd Gurley?
Let's talk Todd Gurley.
So I read in the NFL app that the Rams are calling Gurley in. There's a couple things that I've heard, that they're not going to cut him before the March deadline because they would take too big of a hit in cap space. That they're not going to cut him, but they could cut him after June 1st and save some money that way. I also saw a figure where he's making $1.1 million a year more than Le'Veon Bell. I'm going to explain the significance of that because that's a little bit different. Le'Veon Bell is incentive heavy and back end heavy. Todd Gurley is now in the bulk of his front end heavy deal. So there's a lot of different ways that we can go. I think the Rams need to call in Gurley. I think that was the right thing to do, and I think I know why they called him in. I think they need to call in Goff, and I think they need to call in Cooks. And they need to sit these three guys down and go, can we restructure your deal? That's the first question. If they say no, you get it. Now, I hear you said earlier, there's no way Goff's going to restructure his deal. He just signed it this year. Well, if Goff is a selfless player and he realizes that the team is going to get gutted and decapitated with his contract and preventing them from being able to sign other people, he may be willing to renegotiate that contract. But I think Goff is the least of the Rams' concerns in the renegotiating process. I think Cooks' contract is a problem, and I think Gurley's contract is a problem. And if neither one of those two are willing to renegotiate, then I have a solution. This will make James happy because he's been calling, no way the Rams are going to get rid of, they're not going to get rid of Jalen Ramsey. And I'm sure he's probably thinking, yeah, did you see the commercial? Yeah, I saw the commercial. You know what else I haven't seen? I haven't seen Jalen Ramsey's contract yet. And we are now at February 7th. If that contract isn't signed by March 2nd, he's gone. That's just a fact. Right, Eric?
Yeah.
So, until I see the contract, I'm not going to rule out the possibility that the Rams are like, well, these guys won't renegotiate. We're not breaking the bank for you, Jalen. Adios, vio con Dios. Let's not act like a team hasn't lost a first and a second round pick before, and it didn't work out, and then they were stuck without a first and a second round pick. Let's be perfectly honest. That's happened multiple times in history. But here's what I think the Rams are going to do, personally, or what I would do. Forget the Jalen Ramsey situation. I'm not even going to address that. But I trade Brandon Cooks to somebody who needs a wide receiver, specifically a deep ball threat. Green Bay comes to mind. You try to get a second-round pick. Maybe a second and a third the following year, right? However you can finagle that. Then I would call the Jets and I'd say Todd Gurley for Le'Veon Bell straight up swap contracts. Because they're both big contracts and neither one of them want to take it on. What significance would that do the Rams, Anthony? Well, they'd save around $3.5 million on the cap with owed money to Todd Gurley as opposed to owed money to Le'Veon Bell. Now that doesn't give them a lot. $3.5 million isn't a lot of money when you're talking grand scheme of things, but you lose the Cooks contract. You lose the Gurley contract. Yeah, you gain the Le'Veon contract, but you gain Le'Veon. Right? That's my ultimate best case scenario. What I think is more likely is that the Rams trade him to the Steelers for either a first-round pick next year or a third-round pick a first-round pick next year and maybe a fourth or a fifth rounder this year, or a third-round pick this year and maybe a second or a third-round pick next year, as well as Samuels, the running back that they have backing up Connor. I think that's the most likely trade. Any combination of draft picks and Samuels from Pittsburgh, make him the starter or let him earn it against Henderson and Kelly and Malcolm Brown and see who can get it done. I'd also trade Malcolm Brown to Detroit for a draft pick. And I just take my chances with these younger guys and see what you got coming up in free agency at running back, see what you got in the draft, and play it by ear. Because they've got to free up a ton of money to bring in guys like Brandon Sharif or Costanzo if he retires. We talked about Balaga, the kid from Green Bay. But you're also going to need to re-sign your own in Hecker, in Zerline, or at least Zerline. I don't think Hecker's up. Zerline, Fowler, and Littleton. You got to sign all three of those guys. You can't afford to let any of those guys walk, especially on defense. And then maybe make a play at Dupree if Pittsburgh lets him go, but Eric thinks that's an extremely unlikely scenario. Nancy Pelosi has a chance to actually have a functioning brain before Dupree is let go. At least that's what Eric thinks. So, that might not happen. So, and we know Nancy's not going to get a functioning brain. So, old mushmouth alcoholic drug addict is definitely not going to develop that in the short amount of time that we have left before this next election. So, Eric, your comments.
Well, let me add this with Gurley. If I had to put anything on this on what the Rams would do, outside of keeping him, I think they cut him first before they're able to find a trade partner. As I've said a couple of times, and whether it was on the show or whether it was to Anthony direct, I think that teams might be scared off by his medicals. Now, I don't know what they say, but if he has that arthritic knee that they're talking about, they really need to look at him and examine him themselves to find out if that's what's really holding him back. And I know, they didn't use it much early in the year, and then they fed him the rock, and he looked a lot better. Okay, that's great, but I want to see it again for 16 games.
Yeah.
And they have to be confident that they can get 16 games, or dare I say 17.
How about 19?
But it's a possibility. But can they get at least 16 games out of him if they trade for him? That's the biggest question that they have to answer, and that's the biggest question that they'll have to answer if he doesn't play 16 games or he's not effective for 16 games to their bosses, and that could cost people their jobs. So I think that they would end up cutting him if they find enough to where it makes more sense to cut him to free up some money, whether that's like $5-8 million. That could go a long way depending on who you're getting.
Yeah.
But I watched and I listened to the show that Anthony did regarding what the Rams should do with free agency. Well, now that Eric Weddle has retired,
that frees up money.
I don't know what's that.
That frees up money.
It does, and I don't know what the Bears are going to do with Clinton Dix, but he signed a 1-year, $3 million with the Bears last year.
That's a good point.
What's not to say the Rams take a 3-year, $7.5 to $9 million deal with Clinton Dix. What's not to say, hey, you know what? We can't sign Dante Fowler Jr. and we can't sign Corey Littleton because we're not going to use a franchise tag on him and pay him, 15 to 20 mil. Why can't we go out and see if Vic Beasley wants to come to come to LA because he's not being re-signed by the Falcons. Or, you know what, we might be able to get a cheaper option. He played really well, and he was a real big cog in the defense when he played. His year got cut short last year, but it was more of a freak injury than anything. But, hey, today, Trevathan, guess what?
Yeah.
We have an opening here, and we would love for you to come to the Rams. I'm not saying, like, the Bears are the Rams'
no, I know what you mean.
league organization. But what I'm saying is, you know, when Trevathan was injured and some guys stepped up and played, like Nick Kwiatkowski, middle linebacker for the Bears, when he came in because Roquan Smith got injured, and then Kevin Pierre-Louis came in and he was a force. You know, the Bears are like, holy cow, you know what? If these guys have a chance, that makes some other guys expendable, and we can go fill up some holes elsewhere because we have enough faith in these guys to take over, and Roquan will be back. Or what's not to say that maybe the Rams want to do something differently, because I don't think Leonard Floyd is going to come back to the Bears. I think he's kind of worn out his welcome already. You know, what's not to say if he doesn't go to Atlanta because Vic Beasley isn't there, what's not to say the Rams jump in and say, hey, Leonard, you know, let's chase down Russell Wilson and Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyler Murray on our side, and we'll let you roam free. You know what? You're going to play first and second down, and then Clay Matthews is going to come in and play third down on mainly passing downs. So, I mean, there's definitely ways to work it, and you don't have to go out and spend a ton of money. Yeah, these guys are going to ask for some coin, but they're not going to ask to break the bank.
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing right now. On your scenario with Todd Gurley, if they do cut him, mark my words. Remember, I said this on February 7th, 2020. Okay? If the Rams cut Todd Gurley, they're going to sign David Johnson from the Cardinals. I'm just telling you right now. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, because the Cardinals are going to cut David Johnson. So if they're going to play the cutting game,
of course they are.
You're going to pick him up on the cheap. The
funny thing is that they have to re-sign Kenyon Drake. Now, after what Drake did in the last half of the year, he might have priced himself out of Arizona.
I don't know, Eric. I will say this. I rarely agree with people on the NFL Network. I rarely agree with them. Okay? But I think when you look at Ezekiel Elliott and his production this year, you look at Todd Gurley and his production this year, you look at Le'Veon Bell and his production this year, those are the top three guys, even David Johnson and his production this year. Those are the top four paid running backs in the NFL. And they were all bottom 20.
Well, I'll tell you this much. Dallas paid Zeke because they had to. They didn't want to lose him. But they ended up passing more in the season. Le'Veon Bell went from a great offensive line team to a crap offensive line team.
I'm just saying, it's scaring people. And the Todd Gurley injury and the David Johnson injuries, you give those guys big contracts because of the tread on the tire that don't last very long, and their shelf life is so few. I don't know that you can pay a running back big dollar. So Kenyon Drake may be like, nope, I'm out of the market, but there ain't going to be anybody to take Kenyon Drake for that coin. There just isn't.
Well, yeah, I think there's going to be more so than somebody who's had 300 touches in consecutive years. Let's say if Le'Veon Bell, let's say if Le'Veon Bell was on the market, okay, and they see what his touches were for like the last 2 years in Pittsburgh, and then with the Jets, like they're going to stay away. They're not going to. I mean, I know what the Jets gave him this past year, but they're also unhappy with him because he wasn't as productive, and he's being worn down. But I think that he's just in a system not beneficial to him.
I think he's out of playing shape. I think he was out of playing shape to boot. I'm just telling you, Eric, I think Ezekiel Elliott was the last big dollar running back to ever be signed in a long time.
Well, and that's why I also think that running backs, when they're pretty much eligible to come out from college, they should get to the NFL as quickly as possible and
Agreed.
get their money.
I agree.
There was, I don't know if you guys had heard, but Clemson's running back, Travis Etienne, is going back for his senior year. And I'm like, it's the one position. One position where once you're eligible, you should come out.
I agree.
And he went back to school. Unless you're at a small school that you need that exposure, like Etienne does not need exposure.
No.
And I know maybe the national championship left a bad taste in his mouth and he wants to go back for another one, but, there's always that risk of tearing an ACL late in the year and going from a first-round pick to a third-round pick.
Yeah. It's a bad move. That's a bad move. All right. Well, Eric, what do you think so I want to end with this. I'm going to give you a prediction here, okay? What do the Rams do with Gurley? And so it's a two-part question. I want you to answer that one first. What do you think the Rams do with Gurley?
I ultimately think they keep him.
You think they keep him. Okay. In the event that they do cut him or let him go, who's the running back in 2020 for the Los Angeles Rams?
A running back in college, currently.
Ooh, okay. I see you. I see where you're going with that. All right. Interesting.
Because I don't think that Malcolm Brown's the answer, and I think you're going to see everything you've seen from Darrell Henderson last season and this upcoming season to know that he's not your
future
running back of the future.
No, he's Cleveland Gary reincarnated.
Granted, depending on the type of year that the Rams have, they could be in line for a Travis Etienne when he comes out the following season. So, who knows? I think he would fit really well in that offense. Goff with screen passes, he's a really good pass catcher on the backfield, and he's utilized pretty much every way that Clemson can utilize him. But that's the type of running back that I would look at.
Yeah, well, and ultimately,
I'll have.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, there's other running backs that I'll keep my eye on this coming up season as well. But he's the first name that comes to mind.
Well, I will tell you this: if the Rams do re-sign Todd Gurley, or if they do keep Todd Gurley, he will not be the running back for what will then be going into the 2021 Super Bowl 55 champion Los Angeles Rams plans moving forward. He'll be somewhere else. So if they do keep him, I think it's going to be on a one-year flyer just to kind of maybe do what you just said, get him those 16 games, prove that he's, durable, that everything's fine with the injury, and then drop him before he becomes an issue. So I think that's very possible. All right. Well, without further ado, I got nothing left to add except for the fans. We love you. Keep watching. Keep subscribing. Keep liking the videos. Comment. Let people know about our show. Tell them, hey, if you guys like football, these guys know their stuff. We're really, really excited moving forward. And I guess I did lie. I do want to talk about one thing. XFL. Game you're most excited to see this weekend. For me, it's Seattle, DC. Not because it's the inaugural first game ever. That's a bonus. I just can't wait to see this DC Defender football team on the field. I like their uniforms. I like where they're playing their games. But more importantly, I like some of these kids they picked up from James Madison. Being a big Maine Black Bear fan, I'm very familiar with James Madison University and what those players that were there during James Madison's run the last few years. So it's going to be really exciting to see what these kids can do at an NFL level. I cannot wait to watch these games tomorrow. Eric, your game that you're looking forward to most?
Yeah, just to freshen you guys up on the DC Defenders, I'm going to throw a couple of names out there that you probably know. I'm going to get to the first one. I'm actually going down in numerical order. So one of the first guys they list, Eli Rogers. He used to be, he was out of Louisville, but he also played for the Steelers for a couple of years. Couldn't stay there, but he's a wide receiver. And he's going to be catching passes from the Ohio State quarterback who came in the Big Ten championship game to win. And then won the national championship as well in Cardale Jones. So I'm interested to see how he fares. He didn't get much of a shot in preseason when he got drafted, which means he didn't stay on a roster too long. But he's going to get a chance to shine here. And then I don't know if you remember this name, Anthony, but Rashad Ross, Arizona State wide receiver, is also going to be on the other side opposite of Eli Rogers. in that game. But Seattle, they don't have too shabby of a roster as well. B.J. Daniels, the former South Florida quarterback, he's the only quarterback that I know that I've heard of actually on their team. But I'm going to throw another guy out there. He's playing wide receiver, and this is where he tried to make a name for himself on the Baltimore Ravens. But the former Navy quarterback, Keenan Reynolds,
that's right,
is on the Seattle Dragons roster.
Nice.
So he'll get the ball in his hands quite a bit, but he's also going to share time with their actual running back, Kenneth Farrow, who was out of Houston, and he was on a NFL roster for a little bit himself. But the game that I'm actually looking the most forward to be completely honest, is the last game of the weekend. I'm looking forward to St. Louis at Dallas.
Bookend the weekend, man. That's going to be fun. I'm recording all 4 games. I can't wait. Guys, thank you for all that you do. Keep watching. Keep subscribing. We're going to get into XFL Week 1 recap later next week. We'll also keep up on the NFL news as it's coming in and seeing what's going on with not just the Rams and the Bears, but everybody else. Again, if you've got a favorite team and you've been kind of a quiet fan, comment down below who your favorite team is. And I just want to end with this to you Kansas City Chief fans. Man, you earned it. You earned it. Congratulations. You got yourself a great quarterback. You've always had a great coach. Now you got the Vince Lombardi trophy to hoist up for the second time in your history. And it couldn't happen to a classier organization, to a classier team, and to a classier group of people. So happy for the Chief fans. Congratulations. KC earned it. And happy for all of Chiefs Nation and everybody else. Your comments, E, or your last closing statement.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing a new type of football coming up here with the XFL. Also want to give another shout out to the Kansas City Chiefs organization. That stands as well for a well-deserved Super Bowl victory. If you've seen any of the videos of them partying up, I mean, it's a freaking riot. They celebrated like they hadn't won in 50 years.
Oh wait, they hadn't.
So,
but Eric, I do want to say one thing. It is their first championship in 50 years, but that's still 58 years earlier than the Cubs won.
Maybe, but we're talking 2 different sports. I don't think they're going to see the team go 100 years. But hey, you know what? The Detroit Lions are almost there.
That's right. That's terrible. All right. Okay. Yeah, they've never even made it to a Super Bowl. That's a sad thing. Their last championship was what, 57?
Somewhere along the lines.
Yeah, it was 57 because the Giants won in 56. The Lions beat the Browns in 57. I believe it was like 59-14 or some stuff. And then the Colts beat the Giants 2 years in a row in 58 and 59. All right. Well, there's your history lesson. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. See you guys next week. Horns up.
Bear down.
Go Rams.
And go Bears and go XFL this weekend.
Go XFL indeed. I'm looking forward to all 8 teams. Have a great week 1, and let's keep this thing going because we need some more football. And we need a different version of football to challenge the NFL's boring habits. Not saying that the NFL is boring, not saying that this year was boring, but they certainly have gotten into a little bit of a rut. So go XFL.